Hello, everyone. Welcome to some chatting we've got going on. We're going to do, in these times we've been pumping out a video for you every week with some different information, fun stuff, entertaining stuff. And I thought we need to do some conversations about different things as well. So once a month, we are going to have a talk show style video that we're going to put out. And this happens to be the very first one. And I have got a fun group of people to chat with you. Every single one of these people have been artists with me at some point in my career. And so we've got artists who have graduated many, many years ago to artists who have graduated as little as weeks ago. So without further ado, let's welcome all of the artists for our conversation today. Right on in. Hello, everyone. Oh, yes, there you go. I clicked yours, Brooke, and you clicked yours at the same time. I see you figured it out. It's perfect. Yeah. Hello, welcome, everyone. So today we wanted to talk about the arts and artistry in our world. And I use the term artist very, very liberally because I feel that there is so much artistry within humanity, and no matter what career you might go into, you have all become artists with me, and I have experienced your artistry, and it's important for us to remain an artist as we proceed forward into our life, because there are so many interesting and amazing qualities that we study as artists, as theater people, that really, when you think about it, are really kind of great for the world. Our inquisitiveness, our ability to cause conversations, and I want to talk about that. But the first thing I want to know is, there's some of you I haven't seen in so very long, and I see what you do. I want to know what it is you have been up to. So if it's all right, Brooke, I'm going to start with you because, and we're not talking ages here or anything, but I think I haven't seen Brooke in the longest amount of time. I've seen Ricky, and we're contemporaries with one another, but I haven't seen you in the longest amount of time. So Brooke, tell us what you're up to, what you've been up to.
Yeah. It's been a few years. I I live in Los Angeles. I'm an actor, writer, director, producer, doing all the things. I would say
all of the
what?
things. All of the things, not some of the things. She does
All
all
the things.
Yes.
All of the things. Yeah. Which has been a really fun journey. I think if you would have talked to me when I graduated, or, however many years ago, I was always very much like, I'm an actor. Don't tell me that I'm anything else. And what I have become very familiar with is that the job of a storyteller can have many different titles. So I try to just tell people I'm a storyteller now. And yeah, my focus is in TV and film now. Also continuing the improv train. I've lived out in LA now for about 8 years, and it has definitely become my home, and I love it. And that's me.
So it's very interesting because, when I left high school as well, I was going to only do one thing as well, and it was just fame. I was just going to be famous, like nothing else mattered. And the interesting thing is, you really don't understand really all that theater or the arts entail when I left high school, I was 17, right? So
yeah.
Kelsey, what about you? What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? I am an executive recruiter in the city of Chicago. I've lived here for 2 years now, which seems crazy. I graduated from Ball State University with a degree in acting. And this quarantine, let me tell you, this has actually been the best time for artistic endeavors. I've been writing plays. I've been, doing readings. It's definitely difficult to keep up the theater life alongside a full-time job that I'm also very passionate about. And I think a lot of my theater ties into that job as well. But this has been really kind of lovely to get a little bit of space. That saving 2 hours on a commute is really nice. You can do art and sleep, which is great.
And you're very true. It is a great time for creation right now. It is we have so many things in the world going on, and part of me gets excited for 2, 3, 4 years from now, where we can start to really unveil all of the beauty that creation in these times was able to foster, the stories that are going to be able to be told. I think it's that part of right now, if I was to look on a positive side, I'm excited to see what creation comes out of this time period. I know that Megan Rocha, you've been creating things. I've seen some pictures of things that you've created. Am I accurate in that? You've been creating in this time as well.
I have. I was really lost of what to, like, I wanted to stay something with my hands. So I took up needlepoint and cross stitching, and I don't think I could share them with you now, but it's just something fun that I decided to do.
That's great. Great. What else are you up to in the rest of your life?
I will be going into my student teaching in the fall, and I'll graduate with a degree in special education in December. I recently taught at a school for children with special needs in Jamaica, so that was really cool. But right now I'm just getting ready for student teaching and to start being a real teacher. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Ricky, we work together probably pretty often comparatively, right? Just so you know, you're on mute. But that's right. The great thing is I not only have worked with you, all of you, when you were students, but many of you I also have worked with as colleagues in one sense or another as well. And Ricky and I work together quite often as colleagues, and we have we've traveled together, and
we've been all over,
performed together, and we talk to corporate people together, and we make them do crazy things. So what else have you been up to?
Well, I mean, there's been that for sure. I've done various improv workshops, both on like corporate level and on different levels with like high schoolers and things like that. I'm in Chicago now, and for the past 7 years or so, I've been pretty heavily involved with a nonprofit here, Chicago Improv Productions, that has kind of a focus on improvisational education, kind of moving throughout all kind of grades from like high schoolers and middle schoolers all the way up to college students and adults. I guess my specific focus over the past couple years has been the producer of the college improv tournament, which I know that several people are alumni of and things like that. And that's been really fun. A lot of like delving into like the live event producing aspects of improvisation and things like that. So
fantastic. So have you seen any of the people here at that kind of the Chicago, the improv thing?
Yes, definitely. Kate has been in their past.
Kate's been there.
Has, I believe.
Okay.
Colin, were you in it as well? To be honest, a lot of people run through. Megan, maybe, I don't. Has everybody done it? Who knows?
Who knows? Kate just disappeared. I was going to use that as the perfect segue for Kate. Kate, how about you?
I am an upcoming sophomore as well at Carthage College in Wisconsin. I have a major in theater and a minor in secondary education to hopefully become a theater teacher. I am doing improv there. I'm a part of the Merely Players, which is our troupe on campus. And yeah, just having a good time.
Great. Wonderful. How about Jake? Or as we call it, guest_guest. Go right ahead.
Yeah, why does it? I'm still not very good with technology. I never have been. First off, hey, Kelsey and I graduated together, so it's so good to see you. After I graduated in 2014, I went and I have a degree, Bachelor of Fine Arts in Acting from Millikan University. And I just finished a couple of weeks ago. I now have a Master of Science in College Student Personnel. So I work with college students, and I will be starting my first full-time job here in July. No contract has been officially signed yet, so I won't say where just yet, because I want to make sure I have that contract signed. But I'm very excited about that, and I'll be working in a residence hall and helping students, navigate their college experience, which is very, very exciting. Like many of you on this call, my favorite way to express myself and to perform is through improv. That is like my number one, my home base. Like, this is where I feel the most me. And I can't agree with you more, Dom, about, we have to think about the positive things. That's been really
I'm going to jump over to Maisie. Right now. Maisie, you can, since you're the youngest one on the call, go ahead and tell us. You can tell us what you've been working on, but go ahead and tell us what you hope to work on.
Yeah. I graduated a few weeks ago, which is kind of crazy. Still hasn't really set in yet. Yes, yay. The plan is to attend University of Minnesota Twin Cities in the fall with a major in biomedical engineering on a pre-med track. I'm hoping to get a piano minor, a piano performance minor, so I can keep doing that because that's a really big part of my life. Minnesota does have a few long-form improv troupes that I hope to audition for one of those, just because, like Jacob said, improv is probably, where I feel most comfortable and definitely what I want to keep going with it. Quarantine has been crazy. It happened really fast, but I've been reading. I've been playing a lot of music. I've been taking this time to spend a lot of time with my family, which has been nice, just like getting outside and everything. So yeah, trying to make the best of it.
That's awesome. So let's start with this. And anyone, go ahead and tell me, if you want to talk about this topic, or who wants to jump in first, I should say. Tell me where the moment in your life was that you can remember discovering the importance of your impact as an artist. Was there a moment that you realized, oh, an artist is more than someone who just makes you laugh on stage, or conversely, visual artist just paints a pretty picture? Was there a moment you can remember understanding what your impact as an artist could be?
Yes, I would love to jump on this one. I think about this all the time. I was in John and Jen at Ball State. It's a 2-person musical, full length.
Welcome to the world. Welcome
to the world. It was, just the process itself was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had as a human being, I think. A fully student-produced musical in our tiniest little theater in the basement, and I was very sick the whole time. I had like bronchitis performing this show. And you kind of at that point have to just say, it's not about me anymore. I am in service of the story. So I think that, first of all, was like, there's something bigger than just myself and how I sound. You have to just do the work. And I remember it's a beautiful story about a brother and a sister, and how that relationship in the first act influences Jen as a mother in the second act with her son, who's played by the same actor who plays her brother in the first act. And I remember after the show, again, exhausted, like tired, voice is gone, someone comes up to me and says, I just went outside and I called my sister, and I haven't spoken to her in years. Like, they had a huge fight, and she said that watching the show had inspired her to reach out. And I think that was the first moment where I was like, this isn't about me at all, right? Like, this is my ability to tell a story and the work that we as performers and managers and everyone involved in theater, our purpose is to show people in the audience another perspective or another world. And then that fosters empathy in response.
That's the greatest thing about theater too. What you just tapped on, it's everyone is in service of it. So the second you enter a theater building, or a theater, it doesn't actually have to be a building, quite technically. Everyone is in service of that creation and that effect that it's going to have on that person, and then in perpetuity, like it goes on and forward from that point, which is truly, I don't know many other things that can do that to the human heart, the soul, or a society. You know what I mean?
I've had more of those experiences, I think, and realizations the older I get.
Yes.
And, that's what people tell you when you're younger and you don't really want to hear it. But I've found an incredible sense of giving back through my writing and filmmaking. And I just, one of those experiences was one of my first films, and it was a screening about two young moms that have adopted a baby together. And I'm telling you, as soon as we got out of that screening, out of nowhere, these women just like came up to my writing partner and I, and like, we just went through this. We haven't even seen this. You said our story. We just did this. Like, I haven't slept in 24 hours because we got our baby 48 hours ago. It was just like a realization of, even though sometimes I don't think my impact is significant because I am a privileged, white, straight woman. But there are still so many stories that I can bring to the page that don't necessarily reflect that, and reflect the pain of through humanity, or comedy through humanity, whatever the circumstance may be. But I think I just am reminded, especially in these times, like we've been talking about, in the darkness, like, we are the voices of the world. We have so much say in how people perceive humans, and that is incredibly powerful. And I think sometimes when we're sitting alone, we feel incredibly powerless because we're used to being in community and doing it with other people. That's the power of collaboration. But yeah, I was just reminded of that through this time, because this has actually been a hard time for me to create for several different reasons. But being reminded that through our work, we're changing, just like you said, Dom, like, what's going to happen in 4 years? What kind of films are we going to see? What kind of theater? What are the kids that are seeing all of this transformation in our world going to create? I'm excited for that future, for sure.
Yeah. I'm so on board with you. It still happens to me, Brooke. Like, you get invigorated as you leave high school, and then you get invigorated as you leave college. Like, yeah, and then you start to realize. And as artists, we go through these periods and like this, and you hit walls and you have to tear them down and you scratch, and it feels like you're getting bloody and you're getting nowhere. And then you get to a point where you have to realize, because you've been mentored for so long, right? You're young, you get mentored, and then even when you accept your first job, which two of you are from my very first theater job. At those points, you're mentored by people, and then slowly those mentors start to not necessarily be there all the time. I lost a dear friend of mine who was a great mentor of mine from Quincy. And the person who hired me from Quincy, I recently went and visited that person, who's in a home right now. And you stop and you think, these were the people who I depended on to give me the green light or the go ahead that my art was valid, or that what I thought or wanted to create was okay to do. And now that validity, right, has to come from inside yourself. And you continually have to do that. And when you are alone, it's how are we on the right track? Am I on the right track? Is this what needs to be said? Is this what I want to say? Is this, we are collaborators who work with other people to help us distinguish the stories that we are wanting to tell. But it's important for us to know that we've got it. We are enough, and the artistry that we've got comes from within us, and it has validity in our world. And we have not only the right to say it, we are obligated at some point to do it. Let me ask this. So this is I'm gonna veer into a different topic. Can you have art without the intention of having some kind of social, political, any kind of statement of those things? Can it rise to the level of art, or is it just pretty? Is it just pleasant to hear? Jake, go ahead. Go ahead, Jake.
Something that, for me, it's the interpretation, the personal experience, right? So, for Colin, he might see, this one piece of art, whether it's, a picture or a performance somewhere, and say this is art. And maybe I don't feel anything, or, vice versa. And Colin doesn't feel anything. Right. So I think that for me, I question what our own personal interpretations are of whatever art or experience that we're going through. I have a hard time saying or thinking and feeling that, you could take a canvas and throw, paint on it. And for me, maybe that doesn't feel like anything, but for others, it tells a story. I think about the one time we did an improv exercise, and you brought in two paintings, and we had to do a scene just based off of looking at the painting. And I think we only had like 15 seconds to look at it, and so, yeah, I think it goes back to the interpretation and how, and to the question, like, can it not be socially, or can it not be social, can it not be political? I think that's the world we live in, and we're expressing the world we live in, whether that's past, present, future, ideologies, fantasy, so I have a hard time thinking that it can't be.
Yeah. Ricky, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of back off that and just say I pretty much agree. I think that kind of the inherent nature of creating art kind of all depends on the intent of the person, out there, and art has to have an intent for it to be brought forth, whether that be a positive intent or a negative one. I think it's really hard to separate anything that's kind of brought out there, be it in a benign way or a very important way, to say that there's no sort of intent socially, politically, whatnot have you, that goes along with it.
Yeah. So I mean, so if there is something lacking in a political, social statement or whatnot, is that not in and of itself a statement? The ignoring of any kind of statement which might be needed to be said through the art, is that not a statement in and of itself? Yeah, Maisie, go ahead.
That just makes me think that, there's a lot happening, like with the Black Lives Matter movement right now, like that is very much at the forefront. And a lot of the, what is centered around it is that, especially for, white people, that silence is a statement, because silence is saying that you don't care enough to use your privilege to help. And I think that, what you said about if art doesn't have a statement, is that a statement in and of itself? I think, yes, that is true, because, if you're choosing to stay silent on issue X, Y, or Z, then your statement is that you don't care. And I think that, the fact that what we try to do, especially I know like in BHS theater, is to, have a sort of theme, have a statement, and like, this is what we care about, and like, this is what we want to say. I think that creates art, more than the statement of, of not making a statement, because I think that just represents apathy, in society. And I think that's never I guess there's not a correct route, but that's not the most powerful route to take. Like apathy is never going to be the most powerful thing.
Okay. Yeah. You brought up school, high school. Someone talk about the importance of arts or theater education in school or when you're young. What importance does that have on all manner of student, not necessarily just those who, hey, I love it, I'm gonna be famous, let's go do it, something, right? What validity does it have for all human souls as students? Yeah, Kate, go ahead.
I think an education is not complete without some form of art, because I think, like, in all of the art classes I've taken, besides the fact that I love art, I love theater, I think you learn more about the world in an arts class than you do in, like, any science, any math, like, any academic class. Those are good for, like, life skills that, like, everyone should have a basic understanding of, but you learn so much of, like, just how to be a human being and about the world around you and other human beings that you don't get in academics. So I think it just rounds out the entire education.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Megan.
I've thought a lot about my own teaching philosophy and what I want in my classroom. And I think even in younger grades, maybe in elementary school, when there isn't a class specifically for theater or any other art forms, it's important to include that art in your classroom because anyone can create art. And I think that's a great way to create a culturally responsive and inclusive atmosphere where all your students can feel like their unique experiences and their unique backgrounds are included. So to me, doing theater and participating in the arts in high school, I think gave me this unique view of how to include that in a career that's, no, I haven't been on stage since high school. But I still include those things I learned in high school every time I'm in front of a classroom. So I think the skills, along with just viewing the art, is also something that, like Kate mentioned, just teaches you how to be a better human.
Yeah. Pablo Picasso said, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up. And I think we are all, like, everyone has the ability, no matter what they do, to retain their artistry, to be an artist within the soul of themselves throughout that. So when you are not, creating, when do you use the skills? So when do you use these skills that we learn through the arts and through theater in other things that you're doing in life? When do we use those? When have you used those? Yeah, Brooke, go ahead.
I think the practice of empathy and stepping back and looking at a person as their own unique journey, that was something that I gained through theater, especially improv. It's being, like, incredibly present with the circumstances. Because I think society, we've grown up encouraged to judge others based on what we first come into, the first context we get of them. But I think what improv did is, like, and theater, was allowed me to, like, look at the whole picture, and, like, maybe the action of a person today, how I see it, is not what we actually see. Let's look at the education system. Let's look at where this person grew up, the influences that have been in their life. And I think that's what's really helped me, is, like, I'm much slower to judge a book based on its cover. I want to get to know people for who they are and what their journey has been. And that is something that I'm constantly doing. Like, people watching is one of my favorite things, because I'm just constantly, creating stories in my mind on the populace of the world.
You observe, and then that causes questions, and then, you know what I mean? But what you just described is a very collaborative thing. And I'm not saying that other things in the world don't create collaborative atmospheres, but there is sometimes a sense of competition versus collaboration. And at times, I feel like we've got to be better than someone else in order to be successful, right? Even if we're collaborating as a team sometimes, we'll collaborate as a team so that we can be better than someone else. I don't care what that team is. It could be the team creating a vaccine for us. I've got to collaborate as the American scientists to create the vaccine so we're better than other people or something like that. But if we were to pool everything and collaborate unilaterally all the time and never need to ever be better than another person, turning a ladder on its side, so there's no hierarchy this way, it's just a matter of going this way, that ladder becomes a bridge. That ladder of collaboration becomes this bridge, which we then all can cross together, as no one needs to be better than another person. So does anyone want to talk about collaboration or competition or the differences thereof? Because I'll be honest, I have these conversations with people sometime, and this is the response always. Well, you guys compete all the time. You audition. You're auditioning, so you're against everybody else that's up for a role. And sometimes I try to step back, and I understand where they're coming from, but it's a completely different world, an audition or that kind of thing. So anyone want to mention? Yeah, Kelsey, it looks like you want to say something.
I think when it becomes a competition, it becomes dangerous. And I've thought a lot about this. In arts and theater specifically, it is incredibly personal to create this, to create everything we create. It's ourselves. If we're doing it right, we're putting ourselves into this. And I think it's the safest and the healthiest and the most rewarding to come at everything from a collaborative perspective as opposed to a competitive perspective. I mean, just the act of speaking, using your voice is incredibly personal. I mean, the way that your sound waves are leaving your body, it's shaking your entire being, and you have to.
And mine is it's very nasally and very in my head, so it's very personal for me, Kelsey. Keep going.
Yeah, and if you let the audition process become so competitive that you're then thinking of yourself as less than, if you don't get that part, if you don't get that thing, that's when it becomes, not fun, and not very healthy for you either. So I think that the collaboration is the most important, and it's almost like you're collaborating with yourself.
Yep.
You're building on your past experiences to make yourself better.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I tried to think about it.
Yeah. I saw Ricky first. Go ahead, Ricky.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting balance. It's something that I've thought a lot of, being the producer for the College Improv tournament for this past couple of years. I mean, the program that I run has tournament in the title, and it is kind of by nature a competition, which has been an interesting thing to balance. And I think that collaboration, when it comes to improv, especially in arts in general, is super important, which is why I've always kind of viewed the competition aspect of the tournament as more of the framework for creating the collaboration between the teams, and giving the players an opportunity to showcase themselves. And I think it is a dangerous line that people can fall into when the competition aspects of things are taken too seriously and too much importance is placed on those, because it can have a very negative impact upon the collaboration of individual teams, individuals themselves, or just organizations in general, with like something like that taking place. So it's a very fine line, and I think that focusing on collaboration is like something that is paramount if you're ever going to have any sort of competition like framework involved with something with the arts.
Yep. Great. Brooke, did he cover? Did you want to go ahead, Brooke?
I think Kelsey, I think she pointed on this, but I think the competition has to be with ourselves. And Bryan Cranston talks about that in his book, as an actor, but also as just a creator in general, is learning, rewiring our brains, because I think there's a competition in the school system right now too that leads us to want to excel and to be the best. And I think that really was pronounced in the late 90s into the 2000s. Like, my child has to be the best, the best, the best. And you can't have that in art because it's subjective. So he talks about the audition process was retraining his brain to say, oh, the audition is my job. The work is my job. I do the work. I present my work. My job is done. The booking, bonus. Actually booking the job is the bonus in this whole thing. So if you are going to go about this journey, you have to understand you can't comparatively look at these. Some actors want to look at and number of bookings versus their friend. And it's like everyone's journey is just so different. You have to fall in love with the work. And the work is not often seen. The work is not seen by the world. So you have to get comfortable with that lifestyle.
Great. Colin, did you want to, I saw your hand go up there. Did you want to say something? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that people often get caught in the term of competition because they're competing for the attention of the audience or the best award. But I think that focusing on just putting that focus on collaboration is so much important, because performance doesn't exist without collaboration. It's even like in the name, performance doesn't exist without an audience, and you're collaborating with that audience to push that message across. So just, pushing a focus on collaboration over competition, I think, is very important today.
Yeah. Maisie, go ahead.
So I'm taking a little bit of a different route, and actually something Brooke said about how academically, like, we're very much encouraged to be competitive. And, I'm pursuing a STEM career, a career in the medical field. And that is just a very competitive field. Like, medical school admissions are terrifying. They're so scary. It's so competitive. But I think that, something that I can carry with me from what I've learned, I guess, being a part of the arts, is that you really just, like, you have to know yourself. You have to know your worth, and, everything else that happens around you, no matter how many times you get told no, or however many times, you're struggling.
Oh, you got muted. I didn't do it. Go ahead. Keep going.
Every time you're, struggling to understand a concept, or, you feel like your classmates are, succeeding more than you are, just knowing your worth and, like, knowing that you can succeed. And, it's scary giving up theater and, choosing to pursue something else, because that has been my home for 4 years. But I think just carrying what I've learned and, being a collaborator instead of a competitor is what's, I think, going to help me be successful.
In essence, I mean, Brooke, the way you go into an audition is your version of telling that story. It stems and roots from when you were 3 years old, and everything that you remember goes with you on a certain topic or a certain element of life. And that is your version of that story. And Kate's version of that same story might be a little different. It's just based in hers. No one version of that story is more right, because we're all humans here, and we're all telling a story based on where we've come from in our lives. And that goes full circle right back to that empathy thing, right? It just so happens that you have a director who is at the helm of a ship, and they have an idea of a story that they want to tell. Now, if I choose Brooke instead of Kate, or Kate instead of Brooke, it doesn't mean that one is less valid than the other, or one is better than the other person. What it means is our stories kind of align. And that's kind of the version of the story I'm looking to tell right here. So when we break it down in that essence, I think we kind of, it's not a competition, it's an alignment of the ideas that we're trying to fully evaluate, and the story we're trying to tell. That being said, comedy or tragedy? Right? We've got like what's your what do you love? Like what do you? We've talked about improv a lot, although some improv can be quite tragic. I think we've all lived through some improv tales that are quite tragic tales, not for the same reasons as the actual definition of tragedy, right? But what do you love? Do you love comedy or tragedy?
Do we have to choose between the?
Talk about that. What? Go ahead.
I mean, for me personally, I find the most satisfying art is oftentimes a mix between the two. You know, the honest truthfulness that comes out of comedy and the hilarity that comes out of like the regular drama of every day. You know, they're oftentimes I think the most effective messaging is a mix of the both. You know, yeah.
To
So
play
you're
comedy,
go ahead.
very serious, right? So you have to use elements of both to make a successful either one. So I agree. I agree with Ricky. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think you can't have one without the other. I did a show, Mauritius by Teresa Rebeck. It is a very sad story, and it deals with abuse and just the relationship between these two sisters and some outside characters, and it's a heavy show, but without the comedy that comes with everyday life. You trip over your rug, you spill your coffee, and something makes you laugh and you spit your tea or whatever. I don't think you can fully express yourself and your characters and the idea behind the author and those characters' stories without having one or the other.
Do you actually, Jake, I just a curious question. You actually have a spit take? You've actually done an actual live spit take, Jake? Is that what I'm seeing here?
That's an example.
Oh, just an example. Okay, all right, great. I think what we're touching on is authenticity, right? I think the messaging has to come from an authentic location within the artist. And when an artist is willing to become vulnerable, that's when we're able to become authentic. We're able to touch into things that people want to hear. I don't think we're entirely being authentic necessarily. If the world is screaming for one thing and we decide we're going to give it, let's give it this thing, right? I think there lacks some authenticity in what the world is demanding they need to feel, hear, think about at that certain time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think about like the rehearsal process, right? And maybe it's not the final product, and nothing, I don't believe in the final product. You could always continue to grow and learn and continue to navigate through the journey of whatever show you're working on. But it's the rehearsal process. Michael Chekhov was all about if you're going to do a quote unquote dramatic scene, scrap all of what you think about that scene, and you think about that character and what they're feeling and thinking, and now you're going to do it as a farce. And exploring those exercises throughout the rehearsal process in order to get to that authenticity within yourself as a human being, and then of course stepping into that character as well.
Yeah. I saw, this is touching on one of the elements you said. I saw an interview with Allison Janney, who, Kelsey, you played a role that she played once.
Allison Janney.
Yeah. She was talking about, it was during the last election. And she was talking about how one day she went in and she did her role. And then there was the election. And then the next night she went in and the world had changed. It was a completely different world to her as an artist and a performer. And everything that somehow she had done and worked with, and the whole story was different. The story had come.
Oh no.
Yeah, Dom, I think you froze if you don't know.
Where do we think he was going with that?
Something brilliant. Sure, it was something just so magical. Oh, she's gone.
Hi, everyone. It's our show now.
There you go.
And I'm back. You know, I don't know if you can see out the windows, but there's like the hurricane from the Gulf of Mexico is making its way up here. And of course, when I did this, I was like, oh, weather, who cares? That's why I'm actually on the second floor of the lobby in the center, because I'm closer to the Wi-Fi thing, which is in the ceiling out here. So that's why I was up here. But just the element, just in recap, because I have no clue where I was lost there, that the story evolves and changes day by day based upon what is going on and what is happening. And I think as artists, we have to allow that to be okay. We have to allow that to impact us and veer the story to a different place. Now, did anyone want to say something on that topic that I, okay, yeah.
I'll say something kind of to circle around to what we were talking about back with Giselle. Yeah, art is an ever-changing thing, which is why I think that it's so effective in teaching like empathy and things like that within students. Like it's what we were talking earlier about in the classroom and stuff, and why it's so important in schools. It's so often that within science and math you have these concrete answers, but when it comes to art, everybody here could draw a house and it would look completely different and all the houses would be the same. It's really amazing to be able to put your own experiences into your art and have it be a fluid thing.
Yeah. Kate?
I think that if we were able to still put on productions today, like if the whole COVID 6 feet apart thing, if that didn't exist and you could continue any production that was like currently in performances and see what you were talking about, how it evolved based off of the state that the world is in right now, I think that would be so cool to, like, if you saw it opening night like months ago and if you saw it today, I feel like it would be a completely different show. So I think just like the evolution factor and using what's around you and using what you're going through that day in your performance, I think that can completely change it, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what an incredible lesson to talk earlier about what do we take with us into the real world, into the, what an amazing feature to have about yourself as a person, that you can adapt and you take what you're feeling and you bring it to your corporate job and you let that fuel you as opposed to limit you. That is incredible. And that is something you learn by doing this work, any art, that no one ever, I haven't even thought about that before till just now. So that's a really important lesson. Life
lesson and conversation and questioning does, right? Right. Go ahead, Jake.
I was just saying, life is an improv show.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100%. The best gift we could give to every single student in our world is to teach them improv. Like that is a gift beyond gifts. You know what I mean? In fact, on that note, there are studies now on how improv and autism are incredible things for students, because it gives students the ability to kind of emphasizes the importance on focusing on the now, focusing on this moment, what is happening to you exactly here, not with all these things, and what you can control is just right here. It's just this moment you're in. And I think very often we overlook that. Yeah, Megan, go ahead.
I agree with that there are so many students with autism or other disabilities where the social aspect is also difficult. And that goes for me, that can go for anyone. And having the skills that improv teaches you also gives you the confidence to hold a conversation, because you've practiced you've held a conversation in a scene, and now maybe you can do that in real life. And I also think the arts provide multiple modes of representation. So for students who may be reading a textbook or a novel, the information doesn't reach them, being able to see that information on a stage or in an image or in a painting or listening to a song, that I think widens the scope of, it allows the information to reach a wider scope of people. It allows more opportunities for people to connect with the information. And that's something that I really looked into as a future special educator. How can I present the information in a way that might reach them better or spark a passion? So I kind of went off topic, but what you said made me think of that.
Not off topic at all. So that kind of brings up the question for me. Where does theater stop and start? Does it start at the building? Does it start when you sit in your seat? Like, where is theater? So I'm going to give you a quote from Artaud. He believed in theater of cruelty, okay? And theater of cruelty, first of all, it doesn't mean what people might think it is. So within that definition, theater does not merely refer to a staged performance before a passive audience. The theater is a practice which wakes us up, right? It wakes up our nerves and our hearts. So to him, theater was a practice, right? And the spectacle surrounds the spectator, meaning it's not a matter of sitting and watching. The spectacle is all around that person. And the word cruelty for Artaud is not exclusively causing pain, but just as often a determination to shatter a false reality. So theater of cruelty, and we break those words down. Theater is the spectacle all around us, and it's the practice of waking us up, our heart and our nerves. And the cruelty is the determination to shatter a false reality. And I think of that philosophy on theater, and I think theater doesn't stop. I mean, especially right now, theater is everywhere.
It's the breath. It's your breath. It's what fills your lungs, which makes your heart go, which makes your brain think. It's the breath that allows you to take in expression and then to give out expression. So that's, that quote makes me think of just breathing, of life.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Breathing.
The term. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
I always thought that the term theater was very was different than the term performance. I think that performance happens constantly with everyone. I'm acting different than I would if I was talking to my mother right now. I'm sure you all are too. Everyone acts different depending on the different situation. It's a performance. We're creating, words that we're saying in our heads, and it's hard. I think that it's hard to measure theater. I don't know. I've never been able to find a good definition of theater for myself, but performance is definitely, constant, ever changing.
The word theater comes from the word theatron, which translated means a place to behold. And we talked earlier about art being this thing, in the eye of the beholder. And so if theatron or theater is a place to behold, we're kind of beholding a lot of things, right? Beholding a lot of things.
All the world's a stage, am I right?
All the world's a stage, and we're merely actors, right? Yeah. Anyone have anything else they want to say in closing?
Give gratitude to this conversation and to artists, and I think it's a beautiful thing to be very aware of these things, because I talk to people who float through life with a lack of awareness, and I'm just really grateful to a higher being in the universe for putting us in a place to be able to understand these things and then share them with others.
listen is my message to everyone. I think the number one thing that I've learned from theater, the number one thing is how to listen and how to be present with another person and really take in what they're saying. Whether that's improv, whether that's writing, whether that's any part of theater that you touch, it's listening and being present. And I think that those two things right now, yesterday, tomorrow, the most important thing for us, for everyone, is that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I'm in a very transitional, I guess, phase of my life right now. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was like, it feels hard because I feel like I'm sort of being thrown in the deep end because, I didn't get to finish, I guess what I started. So I was kind of struggling to come to terms with that. But I guess what Kelsey said, just like being present and, not focusing on the things that you don't have control over and focusing on the things that you do have control over is really all you can do. And I guess, that's something that theater has taught me is, you're, your own person and you can control the choices that you make, but you have to adapt to the world around you. And so I think that's a good thing, for me to remember right now in all of my, I guess, anxieties about the next stage. And I think just for any person in any phase of their life, that's a good thing to remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Jake.
For me, it all comes back to a quote. I don't even know who wrote the quote. And it's on a poster that I hang up every time I move, wherever I'm living. And it's something that has inspired, papers and thoughts and conversations. And it's cherish every memory, love every moment, and embrace every possibility. And I think it goes on to that listening and being present and really taking in life. Breathe, breathe, breathe.
We talked about comedy versus tragedy. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't need tragedy? Right? Right? Like, what is tragedy? Like, tragedy, let's see here. I'm going to read you a quick little thing about tragedy because I wish we didn't need it. This is from Arthur Miller in the mid 1900s. Boy, we have to say mid 1900s because, right? What? The tragic feeling is evoked in us when we are in the presence of a character who is ready to lay down his life, if need be, to secure one thing, his sense of personal dignity. The underlying struggle is that of the individual attempting to gain his rightful position. He goes on and talks about how the flaw or crack in a character is really nothing or need be nothing, but his inherent unwillingness to remain passive in the face of what he conceives to be a challenge to his dignity, his image of his rightful status. Only the passive, only those who accept their lot without active retaliation are flawless. It's really interesting to think about that and to think about an empathetic statement that you just said. And if everyone were to have these things that we're talking about and go forward, because in essence, why do we have tragedy? We have that because we need the statement to be said. We need to change the world. The artist needs to speak so that we can force people to think and question their lives and everything around it. So that's really interesting.
Power that the arts really have. They have the power to not only entertain as like a base level, but to educate, to inspire. So I think all of us can see that the arts is so crucial to the world today, to see what people are feeling in the now and what they're experiencing today. And also, like we talked about, we look forward to seeing the outpour of art that's come from today's current events that can be used to educate future generations, as we can use art from the past to educate us about that time. So I think the arts not only are here for us to enjoy, but can be used in so many different mediums and in so many different environments. And I am so lucky that I had this experience in high school, but I can continue to use that throughout my life, since I'm not on a stage anymore performing, but I'm still applying everything I learned, especially from improv, in my life and in my future career, hopefully.
Open your mind, because you take in so much around you and you just want to know if, some of that stuff may relate to you, some of that may help you in your life, and just keep an open mind.
Great. Kate?
Something that one of my theater professors from this past semester would tell us pretty much every day in class was just accept others with endless generosity. Just like that phrase, endless generosity, it sticks in my mind because, like, people create whatever they want, people will do whatever they want, they'll put out whatever they want into the world. And as long as you just accept it for what it is, there will be like no problems, like as long as you just take it in and you accept it and you let them do what they want to do, then that just continues, like, I guess kind of the collaboration thing we were talking about. As long as you support what they do what they want to do, then there's like this community of love and the ability to share. So just the phrase endless generosity is like something that applies everywhere that I think the world needs a little bit more of.
Great. I want to thank you all for being here. This was a great, invigorating conversation. I have a final statement that I had written that I want to end with, but I want to thank you all so much. It's so good to see you all again. It's so good to collaborate with you. It's fantastic. That being said, here's our conclusion. So tying this all into where we are, I don't know enough information about enough topics to speak with 100% certainty about our world today. I do, however, know a thing or two about arts, theater, being an artist. So that's what I want to continue talking about. Artists can relate to the world, partly due to our training in observation and questioning, listening, analyzing. And I believe that artists, and when I use the term artist, I mean it to include all the children who were artists that have grown up and can reclaim their artistry at any time. But I believe artists all around have a duty to push our thoughts and our conversations further. That's what makes an entertainer or a singer or an actor an artist. Someone who uses their talents and skills to question and push the world forward. It just so happens that in that process, we may create something that's aesthetically appealing or something which is pleasing to the ear, or maybe it makes us laugh. We as artists create, and we do it to improve the world. We do it because something inside of us allows us to become vulnerable and tap into places that others can't. And for those reasons, we have an obligation to humanity. We tell the stories and struggles of our time. And if we think for a moment that theater is, as Artaud believes, that theater is a practice which wakes us up, our nerves and our hearts, and is existing all around the spectator, and that cruelty is defined, as Artaud would have it, as a determination to shatter a false reality. We are centered within a central plot at this moment. And we are but the players in this event. I just have one lingering question. How did we get to a point where tragedy, as Arthur Miller might have defined it in the mid-1900s, is a character who is ready to lay down his life, if need be, to secure one thing, his own personal dignity, and that a fatal flaw of a tragic character is someone who refuses to be passive, to now a time where tragedy is not even fighting for something, where you don't need to fight for anything for tragedy to come. Tragedy is being born. Tragedy is being born looking a certain way, and you don't need to necessarily do anything for tragedy to find you. If we can't look around our world and see instance after instance of this, we're closing our eyes to the theater around us. If the flawless are the passive, only those who accept their lot without active retaliation, I choose to retain fatal flaw. As an artist, this is my job. As artists, this is all of our jobs. As a society, we're all the characters. Silence is no option for any character in this stage of our world. Not for artists, not for anyone. We can't be silent. Our theater is everywhere. And as Brecht would say, art is not a mirror held up to reality, but a hammer with which to shape it. Artists, we must pick up our hammer. I feel it necessary. I just want to say that I view the hammer as a tool, not for violence, but a tool that an artist might shape a piece of stone with. My hammer is words, listening, thinking, collaboration, stories. With that hammer, I hope to shatter the flawless, and shatter the false reality. We can not only entertain. Our duty and calling is to transform the beholders. This is what elevates an entertainer to the realm of artist. We should be empowered to use our voices to call out the perpetuation of lies, the immense injustice, and true cruelty, which all of those things, if left unchecked or reflected by an artist, are as good as accepted. Picasso says every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up. If we are all struggling to remain that artist, we can all pick up that hammer, shed our flawlessness, and embrace the fatal flaw, allowing passiveness to wane into oblivion. Arthur Miller says, it is time, I think, that we who are without kings took up the bright thread of our history and followed it to the only place it can possibly lead in our time: the heart and spirit of the average man. Retain your artistry. Your expression of the world is valid. Create thought and conversation and a true mirror of an actual reality. Thanks for watching all the way to the end.